Skype is Pete Hegseth, who is currently running for the United States Senate seat in Minnesota. And man, this is a guy with what I would say a bulletproof biography and resume. Princeton, Harvard, United States military, combat veteran. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Well, we wanted to bring you on to talk about a few things, one of them being the criticism of you for supporting Israel, and to give this audience some time to get to know you, because, I mean, I've known you for years. I've known you as the executive director of Vets for Freedom. I've known your activism on behalf of veterans in what was a non-political organization. For all the talk that veterans groups tend to lean right or support Republicans, you basically were out there supporting veterans regardless of their political persuasion.
Yeah, for us, it was all about whether they supported the mission, whether they supported the troops, whether they would give the troops what they need in funding and support and the time and the strategy in order to get it done. So that was our litmus test. And as you know, Andrew, we talked about this quite a bit. For the most part, that ended up being conservative Republicans, because those were the people in support of those efforts. But there were, a Democrat like Jim Marshall down in Georgia and others who were strong on the war and strong in support of the troops, and so we stood with them. Our principle was not about a party. It was about what they stood for. And I think that's what veterans can bring to the debates in Washington today.
Now, somebody might say, wow, Pete, you look like a young guy. Shouldn't you, I don't know, run for mayor or county executive, maybe the state house? You're going straight for the United States Senate, but you've tackled a lot of things. You've tackled 2 Ivy League schools and a combat tour. Am I right?
Yeah. I tried to tackle some couple Ivy League schools, but I mean, for me, I've only spent 31 years on this earth, but I've tried to make the best use of them that I could. And in every place that I go, you've got a choice. You can get along and go along, or you can fight back and stand up for what you believe in. And whether it was at Princeton or at Harvard or with Vets for Freedom on the war, there were a lot of naysayers and a lot of people who said, in a liberal campus like Princeton, a lot of people saying, what are you doing here as a conservative? Why are you trying to talk about traditional values? Why are you trying to talk about a strong national defense and limiting government? Same thing with Vets for Freedom. During the Iraq War, a lot of people said, well, why are you trying to defend a failed policy? And you have to have the courage of your own convictions to say, I know what I believe. I know it to be right. I know the surge can work in the instance of Vets for Freedom. I know in the instance of Princeton and Harvard that conservative values ultimately win out. We just have to have the courage to sort of straighten our spine and fight back and talk about what we believe. And that's what I think I can bring to this Senate race in Minnesota, is the willingness to say our country is on the wrong track. We're mountains of debt and policies introduced by the Obama administration that are taking us in the wrong direction. We got to fight back, and that's why I think I'm prepared to win this race in Minnesota.
Defending failed policies. Boy, that's going to make for some interesting debates with Amy Klobuchar. Am I right? Yes. Stimulus, Obamacare. If they're going to say that you, Pete Hegseth, have defended failed policies, which I don't think you have. I think you've defended veterans and their mission. How is Amy Klobuchar going to say to the people of, and Minnesota does put out, come on, you guys do put out the occasional odd bird, Jesse Ventura, Al Franken. So I don't know how to gauge Minnesota all the time. But how is Amy Klobuchar going to defend her record if they're going to say that you're supporting failed policies?
Well, she's going to have a very difficult time defending her record. So people in Minnesota have a warm fuzzy about her. A lot of people feel good about her, but they have no idea how she actually votes. Now, when she votes 95% of the time with Barack Obama and Al Franken. People see her and Franken very differently. They vote the same way. In fact, you may have heard of Keith Ellison, our congressman from Minneapolis. She has a more liberal voting record than him. The record is there. Our challenge is to amplify it and expose it, because the media here in Minnesota certainly doesn't want to talk about it. She's a media darling. She does a good job doing photo ops and press conferences on easy issues. But like you said, you mentioned a couple of them, whether it was the $1 trillion failed stimulus, whether it was the government takeover of health care, whether it was cap and trade, whether it was all the debt and deficit spending. She voted against the Keystone XL pipeline. She voted for the bailouts. All of those are votes that she took. She wouldn't have taken them if she didn't believe in it. She took those votes, and she's hoping Minnesotans aren't paying attention. She says one thing here, goes to Washington, and votes down the line with the Democrats, and our job is to expose that record. Andrew, nobody knows this, but in 2006, when she was first elected, and in 2006, all you had to say was, I'm not George Bush, and you would get elected. She was able to pretty much do that in a good Democratic year. She ran saying that the $300 billion annual deficits were irresponsible and not sustainable. Campaign commercials, literally saying she would be a fiscal conservative and tighten the belt. Well, here we are with $1.2 trillion annual deficits. She voted for everything in between. And it's going to be the job of the Republican candidate to expose that record and provide an alternative.
Wow, I could have just handed you off the show there. Like, I could just take a break and go if you want to do this. I'm just playing with you.
Sorry about that.
No. I want you to introduce yourself to the audience here in GBTV because, again, I think you're solid on a lot of the issues. And I didn't realize lately you're getting criticized for supporting Israel. Is that something nefarious that I don't know about?
It's actually become a point of contention in the Republican endorsing battle here in Minnesota. So we've got an endorsing convention in 9 days. And whether or not we should continue aid to Israel has become an issue because one of the other candidates has said he wants to end all foreign aid. And I pressed him on it on Israel and said, yes, that includes, he said, yes, includes all foreign aid, which means that it would not be, we've actually got a debate tonight with the Republican Jewish Coalition, so we'll see if he clarifies that.
But is that, it's one thing to say we got to stop handing money to people who don't like us, who burn our flag in demonstrations, who are operating not in our best interests and probably are even aiding and abetting state sponsors of terror. It's another thing to say, hey, we've got a country here that militarily is an ally of ours. We share a lot of intelligence with them. This is not just some giveaway program is what I'm getting at.
No, that's exactly right. We don't give them economic aid. It's only military aid that we give them. But you're right. When we talk about a place like Egypt, and we know why we used to give Egypt aid, because of the agreement they signed in 1979. But today, with the Muslim Brotherhood, we should revisit that. If we look at the aid we give to Pakistan and where that's going and how what's affect, there are places where we should scale back our aid, no doubt. And I've seen a lot of those places firsthand. But when you look at a country like Israel, that's an exception. That's an ally who's in a dangerous neighborhood with people that literally wish to wipe her off of the map. And that's where who we are as a country and what we stand for. We should clearly stand up and say we support Israel. We will stand with them. And especially with the threat they're facing from Iran if Iran gets a nuclear weapon.
Now, let me ask you this. We're all hoping that the Democrats lose the Senate, but we've got two forces in the Senate. We've got guys like Mitch McConnell. We got guys like Rand Paul. I know they're both from Kentucky. You and I have talked about free markets, job creations, tax cuts. Are you going to gravitate, if you win this election, where we're all hoping that you do, are you Jim DeMint, Marco Rubio, Mike Lee, or, well, I guess I would say Dick Lugar, but he's not going to be there next time around. Are you gonna run for the conservatives in the House, in the Senate?
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely the names you listed, DeMint, Rubio, all of those folks. They're going to Washington to say, getting along and going along, being a part of the establishment, voting the way we have, just decreases in the increases. That's not going to get it done. It's got to be real cuts. It's got to be standing on principle. It's got to be a willingness to say, if we don't fix this now, if we don't turn the ship around now, and it starts, with one member and then two and then three, and then you send a young senator from Minnesota to join them, and pretty soon you've got a critical mass of people who are standing up and really moving the conversation in the right direction. So I relish the opportunity to be there. It's never for me been about being popular or getting along with the establishment. So those are the kind of folks I'd be hanging out with and the types of policies I'd be seeking to pursue.
Are you getting any of the people who are saying, yeah, look, Pete, you're a real smart guy, and I respect your military service, but what are you 31? You get, because, there's this tendency to support older candidates for the Senate. Is that something you're running into as you travel around Minnesota?
I mean, a little bit. Every once in a while, I'll get the pat on the head, like, good luck, whippersnapper.
You get pat on the head.
Wait your turn. I understand. But you know what? The reaction has actually been quite the opposite. It's been people saying, we need fresh blood. We need energy. We need enthusiasm. Your background lends itself to service and leadership and conviction and standing up for what you believe in. We're sick of all these politicians that have been wiggling their way from position to position, making deals along the way, and their compass is more about getting to the next position than it is about standing up for what we know to be right and true as conservatives. So actually the response has been, we're glad you're young. We're glad you haven't run for office before. We're glad that you're willing to stand up and say what you believe. So I feel like youth in this particular case is an advantage. What did Reagan, he said he won't make the youth and inexperience of others an issue. Well, I won't make the age and the experience as politicians an issues for my opponents. I'm the one who's never run for office before, but I've held politicians accountable, and I think there's value to that.
Let me ask you this. A lot of people are saying, I voted for Obama the first time around. Can't do it this time. Have you met anybody on the campaign trail, and it wouldn't surprise me, who said, I voted for Al Franken last time. I can't vote for Klobuchar this time. We need low taxes. We need a more limited government. I always thought of Minnesota, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I always thought Minnesota was one of those limited government states. And again, sometimes I can't follow who you send. You know, Ellison, Bachmann, Jesse Ventura. You know, I mean, you do.
Yeah, it's all Rod Graham's, Wellstone, Boschwitz, you know, back and forth. It's very much personality based. You know, Minnesotans want to believe in the candidate they're sending. They want to have that connection and feel like they've got their best interest in mind. So in that sense, there's a very independent-minded streak in this state. They're looking at the person and saying, do I trust that person? Do I feel like they'll represent my values and really do what they say they're going to do? And that's where Klobuchar has a vulnerability. People, again, they feel like they like her because they look at the photo ops, but we've run into a number of people on the trail who've said, yeah, I've supported her, and then I try to look into what she's actually done. And you can't find out what she's actually accomplished and fought for this state. A lot of small issues, a lot of niche issues, but when it comes to the big issues of the day, she's playing small ball. I mean, we are at a critical moment. She's not taking on or talking about the big issues. Take Keystone XL Pipeline, for example. When that debate was going on, she would not take a public stance, and at the very last moment then voted against it twice, and then didn't say a peep about it. So if it's a tough issue, she runs away from it. If it's easy, she wraps her arms around it. I think people will start to see that once a candidate starts talking about it.
Yeah, she sounds like the president. Now, I've coached you on the radio. What do you do in one of these? You got to promote your...
You got to promote your website.
There you go.
It's PeteForSenate.com. All our information's there. And, of course, we are a campaign, so we do take checks. But it's PeteForSenate.com.
Well, again, like I said, I think your biography is bulletproof. You've got a good head on your shoulders. It's funny when we were doing before the two-way guide to media perception. If you were just a soldier, they'd say you're uneducated. If you were just educated, they'd say you wouldn't understand the common folk. So it looks like you got it both, and I thank you so much for joining me. When we come back, we have a Hollywood legend. Should I give him? I'm not going to give the name now, but this guy is big, and he's got an amazing book, and we're going to talk about Occupy and liberals and Hollywood right after this.